Hi, sorry, apologies, I was having problems with the link.
No worries, thank you. Thanks for joining. I think we are all here and there are participants, I think, still joining, but we will get going now because we've got a lot to cover. I'm just going to do some quick housekeeping notes. My name's Andrea Simon. I'm the director of the End Violence Against Women Coalition. Welcome everybody again. Thank you so much for coming to join us today. A few housekeeping bits before I hand over to our co-chairs, who are Maria Miller MP and the Right Honourable Baroness Nicky Morgan, who were of course delighted are able to join us today and host the event. We're also joined by Alex Davies-Jones MP and a number of fantastic speakers. I'm really looking forward to everyone's contribution. Today's event will be recorded. We will be sharing the recording afterwards on request. And there is going to be a Q&A section towards the end of the session. And we'd welcome you to submit your questions during the event, and we will try and get through as many of those as we possibly can at the end. Participants can enable closed captions at the bottom of their screen, should anybody need to do that. And that's the end of my short messages. So I'm going to hand over now, if that's okay, to Maria Miller MP.
Thank you so much. And it's fantastic to have this event today, particularly at the time when we in the House of Commons are very much immersed in the online safety bill, which is going into committee stage in just a few days' time. And I have the great delight of being a member of that committee as well. We know that violence against women and girls is a top priority for the government. But today's event is about how we can make sure that that remains a priority in all relevant areas of legislation. We're going to hear first from Andrea about a survivor of online abuse, Ellesha, who's going to set the scene before we go on to a panel discussion. And our panel consists of Andrea Simon, Director of End Violence Against Women and Girls, Alex Davies-Jones, who is an extremely effective campaigner on this in the House of Commons for the Labour Party, and Professor Lorna Woods, and of course Professor Clare McGlynn, who I think probably quite literally wrote the book on all of these issues to do with online abuse. I'm going to now hand over to Andrea, but before I do that is also to say I'm delighted that we're joined today also by Baroness Morgan, Nicky Morgan, a colleague of mine here in Parliament, who is working so hard on these issues in the House of Lords as well. So over to you, Andrea.
Thank you, Maria. So it's my job to do a bit of scene setting for you this morning. It's a scene, of course, that we all know very well, that we're really familiar with, because the internet is something that we all use as part of our daily lives all of the time, whether for work, for learning, for leisure. We all have a stake in making sure everyone has got a right to participate in the online world without fear of threat, harassment or violence. And that's why we're all here today, because we're really interested to know how the online safety bill can be made the best it can for women and girls. And we know the online dimensions of violence against women and girls is an issue that the public deeply care about. In a recent poll that End Violence Against Women conducted, 74% of respondents said that they think the government should be doing more to address online abuse of women and girls. And a petition started by Glitch and Evil, calling for violence against women and girls to be firmly addressed and named in the online safety bill, has already amassed over 60,000 signatures. Now, at Evil, we talk about VAWG existing across a continuum. It can't be clearly demarcated into online and offline. The virtual sphere is real life. A survey by Refuge found that more than 1 in 3 women in the UK have experienced online abuse. That's equivalent to 11 million women across the UK, rising to almost 2 in 3 of young women aged 18 to 34. 1 in 6 of these women experienced this abuse from a partner or an ex-partner, and almost 1 in 5 women who've experienced domestic abuse on social media felt afraid of being attacked or subject to physical violence because of this. So online violence against women and girls is part and parcel of the structural and the systemic inequality of women and girls, and it intersects with other forms of discrimination, such as racism. The impacts of that are huge and varied. There is the direct harm caused to individuals and also the broader social harm created when women and girls know that the internet is not a safe and free space for them to be. This indirect harm leads to women and girls taking on the responsibility too often to do safety work. It limits our freedom of expression and it leads to our self-censorship. This then, of course, impacts on public discourse. Who gets to be part of what conversations, the communities that are formed online, the ability to engage in opportunities and in education. It's not acceptable for women and girls to be told to come offline to keep themselves safe. And yet we so often hear that is the response that they receive. And this mirrors the way in which women and girls are often directed to shrink themselves in the offline world, if you want to say, to keep ourselves safe. It's absolutely vital that this legislation delivers when it comes to both preventing and addressing VAWG. And we're really delighted to be launching a Violence Against Women and Girls Code of Practice today. This has been developed with the input from VAWG, from Glitch, NSPCC, Five Rights, Carnegie UK Trust, Refuge, and Professor Lorna Woods and Professor Clare McGlynn. The code is desperately needed if we are to bring about a transformation in the way that platforms, tech platforms, are designed with a view to addressing online VAWG. As it stands, the rights of women and girls to explore, to shape the online world is too often not a priority for platforms, and they are largely unaccountable for the harm that women and girls experience. In many cases, it's a source of engagement and profit for them. We will shortly hear, I'm glad to say and grateful for, from Ellesha about her experiences of being failed by a tech company as further evidence as to why such changes are so urgently needed. The bill's aims of tackling the harms that are caused by and arise from the online environment are, of course, very necessary, very welcome. However, we feel the issue of online VAWG has not been given the attention it deserves. While the different committees of MPs who focused on this bill have taken compelling evidence in respect of women and girls' disproportionate experiences of abuse online, recommended improvements to the bill have been limited so far. This code of practice demonstrates how violence against women and girls could and should be prevented and tackled. And importantly, it also demands that companies recognise and mitigate the intersecting inequalities that are faced by women and girls. We know it is Black and minoritised women and girls who are most often targeted for sexist and racist abuse, and who have some of the poorest responses when they report such abuse to tech companies and to the police. But in monitoring violence against women and girls and in trying to respond to it, particularly that abuse that's perpetrated against women and girls from minoritised groups, we're also confronted with challenges regarding how this is practically done without reliance on surveillance and loss of privacy, given that it is commonly minoritised and marginalised voices who can most often be monitored and silenced. This is why the Code of Practice requires tech companies to take a systems-based approach. We're really pleased that we're going to have Professor Lorna Woods with us today, who's going to be able to give an overview of what that means more fully. But essentially, it is about companies not relying on profiling of users and content takedown. Instead, they need to be assessing risk, drawing on equalities frameworks, preempting harms and mitigating against them. The Code of Practice is also geared towards implementing safety by design processes so that the needs of women and girls and the ways in which they are targeted are centred at the outset and at all stages. Some of the practical steps recommended in this guidance include recommendations related to default settings, account creation, and collaboration and engagement with the specialist violence against women and girls sector. It contains sections on support for victims and survivors, guidance around trusted flagger policies, best practice in responding to reports that are made, and details as to moderation and user redress. The document itself contains the guidelines we propose, but also with additional commentary to bring those guidelines to life and to really illustrate the need for such measures and the impacts that they could have. We're really proud of what we've been able to put before you today, but it has been a rapid turnaround. And it is important to stress this Code of Practice is a live document that we will be keeping under review as the Online Safety Bill progresses through Parliament. It will also be submitted to the Public Bill Committee in the House of Commons for their consideration. It is our hope that tech companies pick this important piece of work up, use it, incorporate it into their companies. However, the best route we feel would be for an amendment to the bill which introduces a duty for such a code of practice. Otherwise, tech companies will be permitted to evade their responsibilities towards women and girls, particularly when they stand to profit from the engagement that comes from online abuse. We have done all this work because we know it's simply not enough to just introduce new criminal offences in this bill. Instead, requiring tech companies to have a standardised, consistent and best practice response to violence against women and girls is absolutely crucial. We want to see the opportunity this bill meaningfully benefit all women and girls by introducing a VAWG Code of Practice. I'm now going to hand back.
Andrea, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Andrea, thank you very much indeed. Brilliant introduction. Can I echo Maria Miller's comments in welcome everyone, and it's a delight to co-chair this event with Maria. Andrew, as you said, there is no online offline. The online world is the real world in the same way that the offline world is very much people's experiences. Women are 27 more times likely to be harassed online. And as you said, Andrea, there are certain people obviously with protected characteristics for whom that abuse and harassment can be even greater. I think one of the things, before I hand over to Alex, and we're delighted to have her joining us as the shadow DCS minister, is that I think we all know that no legislation is perfect when it is brought before Parliament. But the fact that actually we're able to have this debate to talk about amendments and the code of practice we want the tech platforms and Ofcom to adopt just shows why it has been so important and overdue that this legislation setting up this framework of regulating the platforms and the search engines is so very much needed, and the legislation, draft legislation, provides this opportunity. So I want to congratulate everybody who has worked on pulling this code of practice together as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Alex, who I know has to go off to another meeting. Alex, we're delighted to have you. And after Alex, we're going to hear from Ellesha.
Thank you, Baroness Morgan, and thank you everybody for welcoming me here this morning. Apologies, I do have to leave early. I've got a meeting with Minister McGlynn to discuss the long-awaited perpetrator strategy for victims of domestic abuse. So it's all very much linked. But grateful to have this time to chat to you today. I'm very grateful for all the work that you've all been doing in coming together to create this code of practice and really push everything you're doing to try and tackle violence against women and girls, both in the offline and online world, because as we've said, there is no difference anymore. But it's important to recognise that although there's no difference, some of the social media companies and the tech platforms like to see their platforms as a mirror of society, but when actually it's not just a mirror, because they do, through the algorithms and through the way that they promote and amplify content, it does make the situation much, much worse, which is one of the issues that we need to tackle. So in short, do I think that this bill will adequately address violence against women and girls? No. But it's a start, and it is a starting point, and we very much welcome the legislation, but there's much more that needs to be done. And working with you all, we've got some strong amendments that we'll be pushing at committee stage, which is due to start in the next couple of days, as Maria said. We are very much focused on putting women and the girls at the heart of this bill. We want to see misogyny recognised as a priority harm. We want women and girls mentioned on the face of the bill. And we need these tech companies and these social media platforms to go further in order to tackle the systemic abuse that perpetuates online, that currently nothing is being done to try and tackle this. We know that when 90% of misogyny and hate crime was reported to these social media tech companies, 90% of it was completely ignored, even when it was flagged to the moderators. So that shows that something desperately needs to be done. There's a flaw in the system here. And if left to the tech platforms and the companies themselves, nothing will be done. So we need to step in here and try to tackle this head on. As I've said, we support the principles of the bill. We welcome the fact that cyber flashing is to be made a criminal offence. And this is in part due to all the campaigning that Maria and others have been doing in Parliament for many, many years on this. But I'm concerned that this will although we make it a criminal offence, it won't be adequately enforced, and we will have very few conviction rates because of the need to prove intent to cause harm. So that this needs to go further here in order to really, really tackle the root of the problem. As Andrea said, we know women and girls are disproportionately affected by online misogyny and abuse, and women of colour even more so. We are the victims in this, and it shouldn't be that our voices and we are told to be diminished and we are told to be removed from that online space. We don't want to create a two-tier internet. So it is vitally important that this is addressed in the bill. One of my other big concerns that we'll be pushing heavily at committee stage is there's this scrapping of categorization of platforms, and we've been working hard with the government to try and get a way around this. We know that it's the smaller, high harm platforms where a lot of the misogyny, abuse, this incel culture, far right extremism is growing, which is perpetuating this narrative that women are evil, and it's encouraging violence against women and girls. Just chatting to some of my schools when I go on school visits and talking to them about the bill and about their experiences, even getting the boys involved. And we had an experience where a 15-year-old boy just Google searched, why can't I get a girlfriend? And he was then shown and pointed towards these forums where he was being groomed and encouraged to take part in that. The fact that it was women who were the enemy, it was women were the devil, he should hate women, and really, really encouraging and growing that level of violence against women and girls. Which brings me on to my other point and my other concern around the bill is the fact that the digital media literacy strategy has been completely and utterly removed from the bill. So if we are to support younger girls and pupils and schools and teachers who are directly impacted by this every single day, there needs to be this really flagship program of digital media literacy strategy, which goes to the heart of the bill and helps enable everybody to stay safe online. So there are some of my main concerns. I could talk for hours and hours on end on the impact of online porn and how that impacts violence against women and girls. Now we need to do more to tackle that, but this is all something that we will be pushing at committee stage. We've got a lot of amendments and new clauses to push through, and hopefully we can get some of these big changes in the bill to make a real difference, because we don't want it to just be another piece of legislation that doesn't actually tackle the problem.
Alex, thank you so much. And you will have hours and hours to discuss this when you get to the committee room next week. But know this, that there will be lots and lots of people watching the debate. And I'm certainly watching it from the red benches with great fascination. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm going to hand over to Ellesha now, who is going to talk about her own experiences. Ellesha, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. So my experience has been very poor experience with online, with the online system, with porn websites and how they tackle cybercrime, how they tackle image-based sexual abuse. So in 2018, unfortunately, I discovered that I had been the victim of voyeurism and image-based sexual abuse at the hands of my ex-partner. He had filmed me without my knowledge during our relationship. Our relationship wasn't a good one. It was very mentally and emotionally abusive. So it just added to that coercive control that he thought he had over me. I wasn't made aware until someone else actually discovered the videos online. So I didn't even realise they existed. I'd never consented to them at all. In fact, on several occasions, I'd said no to anything like that. Unfortunately, I found out that he'd done it anyway and without my knowledge, and he'd done it behind my back. And when our relationship ended and I cut all contact with him, he lost that coercive control, and his response was to immediately upload these onto his own Pornhub account. So the account was under his name, it was under his email address. So I reported into the police immediately. So as soon as I kind of verified that it was myself in those videos, and was hoping kind of that something would be done about it. It went off to a good start. I was pulled in straight away for an interview and to go over what I'd found. Then it quickly plummeted. So I quickly was made aware that the police actually couldn't get onto Pornhub to receive the information from the account. So I was left to go home and video the videos myself, to go through the website, see all the comments, read through all the comments, screenshot the comments, go through his account. So I had to watch every other video that was on his account to make sure I wasn't in them or there wasn't anybody else in them. So it quickly took a nosedive, really, and began to be quite a stressful and distressful situation. The thing was that the account was under his name, though. That should have been enough to kind of get him convicted of what he's done. But unfortunately, he because there was no verification process on Pornhub at the time, there was questions about who had actually uploaded these photos. They traced it back to his IP address, but they were saying that he lived with his family, so any of them could have uploaded it. So the fact that Pornhub had nothing in place to ask for identification from people uploading videos, they'd got no way of tracing consent, they'd got no way of checking that the people in the videos had agreed to be in these videos and agreed to be uploaded. And also, when there is criminal activity on the site, there is no way of directly tracing that back to a person. I left everything to do with Pornhub, so the communication with Pornhub about the videos being on the site with the police. I was hoping it would be in capable hands at that point, but unfortunately, although they initially responded pretty much straight away to the police inquiry, the response they gave was very vague, and it was very poor. It was a very poor statement that they gave, that basically they can't give this information, they can't give that information. They're not going to give us a description of how you have to physically go through the upload process, which is all they were asking for at the time. Was they just wanted to show that he'd gone through a thought through process in order to upload these videos, and he'd not just accidentally uploaded them. So they responded initially. They gave us nothing really. They provided nothing for the investigation. And then every correspondence since then, they ignored. So they completely ignored. When this was challenged during the second investigation, because it went through investigation twice, they said, oh, well, the emails were being sent to a email address that's not manned. We don't use it anymore. In which the point is, well, why did you respond to the first email on that email address then, and not every subsequent email? Why were those not responded to? And the fact is that they are just completely trying to disregard the fact that that is happening on their site. They're trying to distance themselves from it. They're trying to not admit any sort of fault on their part. And in doing that, all they did was completely ignore us. The videos were actually taken down after this guy was arrested. So I don't actually think that they were taken down by Pornhub, because his whole account was deleted once he'd been released. Unfortunately, he still had access to his phone, his iPad, everything once he'd been released. It was never seized by the police. It was never checked by the police. So unfortunately, I think he literally just came home from the police station and deleted his account. There was no influence by Pornhub to take these down or immediate action to get rid of them, unfortunately. The police and the same were really poor. And I think the two together definitely ended this investigation, essentially. There was nowhere to go from it. There was no information coming from either side. There was also the point of that the videos that were uploaded had very derogatory and misogynistic titles. So they quite clearly stated that I was an ex of his, which at some point you would have thought would be flagged to moderators to think, well, hang on a minute, would you want your ex-partner posting something online of you? There's a reason they're an ex-partner, and there's not many people in this world that would go, okay, well, yeah, post those if you want. We're not together anymore, but you can post those. That was never picked up. And that was probably due to the fact that at that point, they had 6 moderators. For millions and millions and millions of videos, they had 6 people going through and pulling off content. There was no point where he had to present any ID to upload his photo, to upload onto the site, which would have been a really crucial step in the investigation, in that he couldn't then blame somebody else if he's provided ID to say, it's me that's uploading this. There was no consent checks. There was no consent from myself, and that was never checked through the whole process. He was just allowed to just upload a video of more than one person and wasn't questioned on it at all. All of this would have either stop this from happening in the first place, if it had just been moderated, or if the consent had been checked, or if he'd had to provide ID, then he might not have done it. I mean, I'm saying he might not have done it. He uploaded it onto an account with his name clearly on the top. So it might not have stopped him, but at least the police would have had a direct line straight to him to say, well, this is the guy that's done it. I think the problem is that what they've done is they've provided him with a platform in which to commit crime, and they weren't wanting to admit fault with that. They weren't wanting to admit that they had provided him with that space in which to abuse women. And unfortunately, because of their failings and because of the police failings, this guy's got away scot-free, has had no consequence from this, and will just continue to do this. So he's got several convictions for doing similar things, for abusing women. He's been in court handfuls of times, and none of this was checked by Pornhub either. They're not checking who are creating these accounts, and if they have a past of doing things like this to people. I mean, it's the same with things like paedophilia and stuff like that. Nobody was checking that these girls were of the right age, and nobody was questioning the people behind the accounts. And I think that's something that desperately needs to change. There needs to be more regulation in place. There needs to be harsher punishments for sites that don't put barriers in place to stop this from happening to people. At the minute, Pornhub could just turn around and say, well, I'm not legally obliged to help. I'm not legally obliged to help you, so I'm not going to, is essentially what they did. They said, I don't legally have to help you, so I'm not going to. And then when questioned about why they weren't helping, they lied and said, oh, well, you're sending it to the wrong email. Or so it's just a complete moral disregard of the fact that there are people behind these videos, that there are people, these people are real people and they live their lives daily. I mean, I struggle with the fact that I don't think this crime in itself is treated as seriously as it should do, because it's online, like someone was saying earlier. They think it's not a real place, but it is. It has real life consequences. And if somebody filmed you on the street inappropriately, then it would be dealt with a lot differently to if it was uploaded online. And I think that's something that desperately needs to change. And the starting point is stopping from sites from just being able to do what they want to do with people's footage and having no obligation to check what is going on their sites. I think it's a desperately needed code of practice, and it needs to be adhered to, and the punishments need to be severe enough to prevent this from happening to other people.
Maria, over to you, I think. Thank you, Ellesha. And I hope, Ellesha, you have a chance to look at the comments in the chat, because a lot of people have been saying thank you for sharing your experiences.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And I think what Ellesha's really brought out there is, I mean, we know the Law Commission are reviewing the law in this area, which I think is inadequate, but also that the lack of focus by the platforms on seeing it as their responsibility, that the way their platforms used are lawful. And I think that that's absolutely essential for us to hear from people who've been victims of this but have survived it. And really, our thanks go to Ellesha for so eloquently setting out the problems she's experienced, though of course we would have wished her never to have gone through that. And Ellesha, can I thank you, because I will keep what you've just said very much in the front of my mind as I look at the bill in the coming weeks. It's a very powerful message, and it's really helpful for those of us involved in legislation. Right, we're now moving on and looking at questions to some of our panelists. I think that's our next sort of port of call. And I think we're going to be talking first of all to Lorna Woods. There's been a lot of discussion about the Online Safety Bill and the extent to which it reflects a systems-based approach to addressing online harms. Lorna, can you explain what's meant by systems-based approach to addressing online harms? Those of us who've been immersed in it are still struggling with that. How does it relate to the idea of a code of practice? And does this reflect a systems-based approach to addressing online VAWG? Laura, help us on this a bit.
Thank you for the questions. I was struck listening to the speakers, all pointing to different aspects of systems design and how those features played into the problems that were created. Ellesha mentioned the ease of uploading, a lack of checks, sort of inadequate moderation, a poor complaints procedure. Alex mentioned the role of algorithms in prioritizing extremist content, and Andrea mentioned a whole range of things about account checking, as well as other support mechanisms. And these are all systems-based approaches. What we're talking about is not looking directly at identifying individual items of content, but recognizing that the design of the service, of the platform itself, has an impact on what content is created, how that content is shared, the extent to which it is visible and goes viral, and the extent to which, if you like, corrective action can be taken either by victims themselves, whether there are self-care tools in there, or through complaints mechanisms and through takedown mechanisms, whether the platforms themselves are moderating. So this is the idea of looking at how effective those tools are in keeping users safe. So it's stepping back from the content and looking at the platform as a product or as a place and saying, does the design of this place tend towards the exacerbation or the promulgation of what we might loosely call bad content? Or does it favour informative, helpful, positive content? I know they're all value judgment words, but leave that be for the time being. Because the fact is we can use these platforms for many purposes, some good and some bad. But at the moment, the way the platforms are designed are not neutral as to whether they end up getting used for good or bad. They seem to tend to exacerbate or to skew us to the worst in human nature. So a systems-based approach recognizes that design is a choice by the platform creators, and that they have a responsibility to think about the risk and then to mitigate. So in a sense, we're saying, check your product safe. Are there any foreseeable consequences from how you've chosen to design this? And that's where all the questions about how do we view anonymity and burner accounts, valuing engagement above reliability, not investing in moderation, all those questions. Moving on to the bill briefly, at heart it is a systems-based approach. It does recognise what the bill defines as characteristics and looks to the features. It does require a risk assessment, and mitigation is dealt with in 3 separate safety duties. So there are different obligations in relation to illegal content, content that is harmful to children, and content that is harmful to adults. It envisages, because these are very high-level obligations, that the detail as to what the technicality looks like, which would be inappropriate to specify in legislation because it would get dated so fast. That goes to the regulator, who will do research and try and come up with guidance and codes of practice for the services themselves. And this is where this code of practice comes in. We're trying to draw out the examples of where design has adverse consequences or where it supports violence against women and girls in its broad manifestation. So we're trying to help the platforms and Ofcom understand the nature of this and how the two, the design and the proliferation of violence against women and girls, are interconnected. There's one final point I'd like to make, which is I think the code is important in that it also shows that violence against women and girls isn't put into these three separate buckets or just about illegal content, but that there is a whole range of content. So looking at a code that is against violence against women and girls generally allows us to draw those themes through rather than artificially partitioning the issue up. So I'll leave it there, but happy to answer any more questions.
Lorna, that was possibly the clearest explanation of that issue that I've ever heard. I'm very grateful to you. And you know, we've got here designing products to be safe is nothing new. But we have a sector that has said it's exceptional. It's not able to do this. And what you have just explained is exactly how that can be very logically applied. The idea of designing safe products can be logically applied to the online sector in the same way as we do elsewhere. I'm just going to, I'm mindful of time here, so I was just going to bring perhaps Clare McGlynn in at this stage. We've got a question here for Clare. What would be the ideal outcome from the implementation of the VAWG Code of Practice? What do we want the online world to look like for women and girls? Clare, what's your answer to that?
Thank you. I'll be very brief because we want to get to some discussions. I guess just to emphasize what others have been saying, the whole ambition and the exciting thing about this bill is that it could prevent and reduce the harms against women and girls, the prevalence and the nature of those harms. Many of us have been working for years to try and improve the criminal justice system, but that's always after the event. The thing about this bill is that it could actually prevent and reduce those harms in the first place. That's why it's such an important opportunity, and that's also why the Code of Practice is so significant. It is about ensuring that those tech platforms from the very beginning, from the very start, take violence against women and girls seriously, because I'm afraid many of us know that unless that is named and obligated and prioritised, violence against women and girls will get pushed to one side. And then I'm thinking, and just want to remember that the code is also about trying to ensure that the regulator Ofcom is aware that this is a priority. Ofcom are going to be bombarded by organisations, by companies with, very large resources to try and influence them. A mandated code of practice like this can hopefully help ensure that the voices of women and girls are heard in all those decisions made about priorities around regulation. And I think Ellesha's case highlights that very significantly. Are we going to see the regulator taking the steps needed against companies like Pornhub that are and fulfill those obligations in the code of practice? The code of practice will hopefully begin to get us closer towards solving some of those problems that Ellesha has outlined. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm conscious, as Maria said, we have questions coming in from the audience, but I just wanted to give Andrea a chance just to, whether there was anything you wanted to expand. You mentioned media literacy, Andrea, in your opening comments. Education is obviously very important in terms of people's attitudes toward VAWG, online, offline, the ability to assess content, but also just generally about safety online. You mentioned, as I say, your feelings that the media literacy provision be taken out and how much you oppose that. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yes, I think it's such an important point. It's really central to prevention of online violence against women and girls. It's going to rely heavily on greater media and digital literacy, which actually it really needs resourcing. It is disappointing that in the most recent version of the section in the bill, media literacy has been removed, and the provisions for it are now, I mean, we would say, weakened. There is such great work that's been done by civil society organisations in this area. Glitch, one of our partners, runs a digital citizenship programme, for example. But it needs that, I think, the government leadership and the investment. There's a report that the Children's Commissioner did that found that on average, children post to social media 26 times a day. You know, they're hugely present online, and I just don't think that we can look at the implementation of the bill without looking at that wider context of relationship sex education. And you know, we've done a huge amount of campaigning around the introduction of compulsory sex and relationship education in schools, and whilst we've seen that's been introduced, it hasn't yet had the type of resource it really needs to recognise that it's a hugely important specialist subject. It's crucial to reducing sexual violence, domestic abuse, and the online dimensions of VAWG, and that, you know, we're concerned that if we don't put in sort of the resources with media literacy, that we're on a similar trajectory, and that we don't get as an effective response as we could do. You know, young people need that kind of information, because they can be very susceptible to misinformation, disinformation online, and there's such a significant overlap here with what needs to be done with our SHE, and we're just very keen to see that work being reflected in the RSC curriculum, with a focus not solely on how to behave online, because it's really important that we don't purely focus on safety and avoidance and give the message predominantly to girls that they need to be doing this, and they need to be doing that to stay safe online. Schools need to be funded in a way that empowers young people to use the internet, and it is also able to work with parents as well and the wider community regarding online harms as part of what we call a whole schools approach. So that's what I'd say was very vital in this area.
Thank you very much indeed. We've got a few minutes now that for questions. I can see that they're coming in via the Q&A box, so we'll try to get through as many of those as possible. We've got a couple of questions actually, given what we've all heard from Ellesha's very powerful testimony, just how, and perhaps this is for both, well, for Lorna, I'll come to you in the first place, but you know, Clare as well, how this code of practice would help in terms of, you know, how would it make Ellesha's experiences, well, as Maria said, she's never going to go through this, but if somebody did have an issue like this, how would this code of practice help in terms of tackling a platform like Pornhub in the future? Lorna, do you have a view on that?
Well, it's to a certain extent a bit hard to guess, but one might expect that standards would reflect some of the points that Ellesha made around the ease with which content is uploadable. Sorry, that's not very good English, but you know, it's one click and you're there, and there are no pauses perhaps to allow a little hint of remorse to creep in. There are no systems around cooperation with law enforcement, for example, and evidence retention, you know, surrounded by necessary safeguards for civil liberties and the like. I would say that there should be some minimum standards around, you know, sort of the sufficiency of moderation, and that would be, I think, about having content experts in there, and especially if you've got a high risk or a specific focus for a platform, that it might be rational to expect that they'd think about the sorts of issues that would be likely to crop up and have moderation processes tailored to that. And the DCMS Select Committee's recent report on influencers suggested that, for example, a complaints mechanism based on individual posts wasn't actually sufficient for harassment, which is, as we know, a series. So that you might think about how in certain circumstances your complaints mechanism works, whether it is a one size fits all. And then you've got to think about, you know, the who can complain, you know, sort of, and different characteristics. And I would hope that Pornhub was not letting children on, but, you know, for other sites, you know, sort of, are there age differentials to take into account? And I think having monitored points of contact for urgent cases would also be a minimum standard in there. I think we should look also at the business model and what the incentives are and whether there are rewards being given for bad behaviour in terms of shares of advertising revenue and the like.
Thank you very much, Lorna. Ellesha, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything about how you feel with the code of practice having been in place.
Yeah, so my thoughts are that I think it will have an impact. I think it depends on what the sanctions and the kind of the punishments are for breaking that code of conduct. But it's, as we've seen from Pornhub already, they had the issue of that there was criminal activity happening on the site, and all of their big funders, all of their big support started to pull away. And as soon as that happened, they started to make changes. So I think it's definitely think it will work as long as the sanctions that are put in place for breaking them, those rules that we put in place, are adhered to and they're strong enough to hit the high flyers like Pornhub. Obviously they've taken a lot of money. If you're just finding them a couple of £100 or something, it's probably not going to bother them, but the sanctions need to kind of be relevant to what's happened and relevant to the crime. But I think it definitely is a step forward in the right direction to holding them accountable for what happens on their sites.
Ellesha, thank you very much. So Louise has asked, what amendments does the panel feel are needed to recognise online abuse targeting disabled women and girls? Andrea, I wonder if you have a view on that.
Yeah, sure. And if I can also just say to Ellesha that I think you really highlighted so many of the issues of the criminal justice system and their response to victims and survivors of abuse and how poor that can be. And I think we've got to look at this bill landing in a setting where there is a huge, copious amounts of training that need to take place to make sure that the police can respond adequately to survivors. Because currently, you know, we hear stories like Ellesha where victims are just being massively failed when they do approach the police to report this type of abuse against them. The question about disabled victims in the bill, really excellent question. I think it goes to the heart of how intersectionality, when it comes to this bill, is not really being factored at all. I mean, if we take risk assessments, for example, we've got to take into account harm that is resulting from intersections and of different characteristics and inequalities that come from being a woman, from being disabled, from being minoritized. And the bill isn't currently looking at people with those overlapping characteristics, the harm that is caused online, and dealing with it very well. I think that is crucial, getting intersectionality reflected in the legislation and being able to speak to overlapping experiences of abuse. But I think also that there's an issue in terms of getting the right expertise to be able to inform the safety by design work. You know, we need organisations and groups with expertise around violence against women and deaf disabled women's experiences, minoritised women's experiences, to be able to inform and collaborate on safety by design approaches. We need to be able to identify clearly and define and respond to different forms of harm that are impacting different groups. And I think we need to have greater training around moderation in that respect. That's got to be driven by this kind of expertise. And then also looking, and the code of practice points to some of the lack of diversity around in tech platforms, like who's actually there, who's contributing to this work. Is it really reflective of all the different groups and users of the internet? I think there's a massive issue with that as well.
Thank you. I think that's excellent points, and particularly that last one. I've got a question for Clare, I think. which says, anonymous attendee has said, as sharing non-consensual deepfake pornography is not yet a criminal offence in England and Wales, do you think the bill could be used to help provide victim survivors with redress? There are many websites dedicated to deepfake pornography that are not regulated at all. And do you think Ofcom powers should be expanded like the E-Safety Commission Australia to remove content from these platforms? And then sort of perhaps a related question again is about support for victims and whether more could be done as well.
Yes, so as the person says, distributing deepfake porn at the moment is not a criminal offence in England and Wales, yet it's quintessentially a form of online abuse about new forms of technology. So it would be great if the online safety bill could be used as a vehicle to introduce that offence and make it clear that distributing fake porn is a criminal offence, and that could then mean it would be a priority offence. Now, it is actually a criminal offence in Scotland, and the way the bill is set up, it means that if it's a priority offence and a criminal offence in Scotland, that should then mean that the tech companies use that higher standard across the UK. So it may be that we can use something like the Code of Practice and the bill to ensure that tech companies do take deepfake porn much more seriously. But you also do raise the very important point about survivors and about getting material swiftly taken down. So, for example, the Code of Practice may help ensure that the tech companies do have better policies around detecting this material and swiftly taking it down. But we do also still know that we're going to need organisations like something like the Revenge Porn Helpline, which does such excellent work with little resources to get material like this swiftly removed online. And it would also be great if we could see in the online safety bill some more concrete measures to ensure that kind of polluter pays, as of course many members of the panelists have been arguing for many years, to fund those sorts of victim services, and particularly ensure that we're looking out for services that support Black and minoritized women as well. Thank you.
Claire, thank you for that. We're coming to the end of our time. I want to just squeeze in 2 more questions before I hand back to Maria. Maria, you'll see also there's a couple of questions for you, one about user address, and also I think you've very helpfully put the details about how people can watch the start of proceedings next week, but that might be worth re-emphasising as well for people. One question I want to pick up was from, well, firstly, we've got a Kat from the Revenge Porn Helpline here, so they do a fantastic job. So I'm delighted, Kat, you're here and listening, and thanks for the question. William, you asked from Carnegie about the radicalisation of adults into inceldom, and I think you're absolutely right. That's not covered at the moment because it's a relatively new form of terrorism. I've been looking at it, working with the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. Alex mentioned it briefly. I'm sure it will come up in committee, but I'm delighted to hear from you, perhaps outside this forum as well, on that. And the other question, I think I just wanted to touch on, Lorna, you might know this. The question is, what happens in the situation that the platforms themselves are hosted outside the UK, and how is that managed? I know the bill does talk about extraterritoriality, but I just wondered if, very briefly, you might want to hand back to Maria, just see if there's an answer to that.
Yes, you're right. There is an element of extraterritoriality. That is that services that are located outside the UK, but which have a UK audience, should be bound by the standards set down in the Act and by the codes made under the Act when they're out and about. There's always the question of how do you make a law bite on companies outside the UK. For some of the big companies, it might be that there is an embarrassment factor, that if they're listed on stock exchanges and the like, they wouldn't want to be seen to be a bad actor. But more concretely, there are provisions in the Act which I think are derived to some extent from the late lamented Digital Economy Act provisions to require business disruption methods. So this is getting at the money flows, so services that are important for the running of a platform, so I don't know, MasterCard and Visa and the like, trying to get those services disrupted. And the final fallback is blocking. None of these will be perfect, but I think that it's unrealistic to expect perfection in this, and that a radical reduction is good enough.
Maria, over to you.
Thank you, Nicky. Desperately trying to type in the chat some of the answers and failing miserably. So maybe I'll just say here, I just in terms of the international aspect, I just wanted to say we actually had a meeting with representatives from the US last week, and let's not underestimate how much other countries are looking to the UK. We are doing more on the regulation of the online world than any other country in the world, and in the same way as modern day slavery, which Nicky was intimately involved in her time in government. You know, the other countries are looking to the UK in terms of how do you frame legislation that is effective and effectively could be effectively extended out to other countries. So I think that's an important point on there. Just to underline on the issue of user redress, I think this is really important. And one of the I know I'm sort of chair of this, but I'm going to make a sort of panelist comment on this. I mean, one of the things I'm looking at pressing for within the bill is a way in which some of the finances that will be released in the form of fines can not just immediately find their way into the coffers of the Treasury, which is what fines are there for, but actually are siphoned off into a funding stream for support organisations, because there's no way that the already overstretched revenge porn helpline is going to be able to support all of the victims who are going to be needing help in perhaps independent and impartial support in getting material taken down, because of course the platforms will not be independent and impartial, and it might be that there's a need, at least in the first instance, for a third party, because of course the regulator won't be there to deal with individual cases. They will be there to regulate the entire industry, and I think that's something which is going to be a challenge for those who've got individual redress problems. So there's a couple of thoughts there. Look, I think what this debate today, or this discussion today, has shown is that the issues that face women and girls in the online world are incredibly pressing, that there are still gaps, as Clare has alluded to, in the legislation, which we hope the Law Commission report that hopefully is coming out next month will start to plug. And there are still things that we need to do within the online safety legislation to be able to make sure that the issues facing women and girls are properly addressed. And the idea of a code of practice, which has now obviously been published, is, I think, a really interesting one to take into committee. The Public Bill Committee, of which I am a member, starts on Tuesday at 9:25, taking evidence. Can I urge everybody to have a look at the House of Commons website to see when the other evidence sessions are, and indeed when we do line-by-line scrutiny of the bill. That is only the second stage of scrutiny. The most public stage of scrutiny is what we call in the House of Commons the report stage, which will come probably hopefully before the summer recess in July, which is when there will be much more wide-ranging debate on amendments to the bill. So please stay close to that. And just to underline, you know, this is a world-leading bill. And what we do in this bill will matter to other countries very much. It is not perfect. Nobody will say it's perfect. We need to improve it. And I think the discussion today has reiterated how important it is that we address violence against women and girls within this bill, and that we underline to the regulator how important violence against women and girls is. And there are so many excellent people involved in this discussion. I'm sure that Melanie Dawes will be listening very carefully to that, and I'm sure Nicky and I will be making sure that she does as well. So thank you all very much for taking part in the event today, but a particular thanks to Ellesha. because if we don't hear from people who are victims of crimes, however painful it is to speak about those crimes, it is all the more difficult for legislators like Nicky and I to be making the powerful arguments that need to be made. So, Ellesha, we are in your debt. Thank you for taking the time to share and know that it makes a real difference. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Maria and Nicky, for joining us and for chairing. Thank you.